Mara, Ben, Merle. Okay, we're sort of there. So, Lynn, so Lynn, you came on for a second for language. Anyway, it is good to be here and to have the opportunity to study with you. Ben Goldfarb, what is that shirt you're wearing?
Rabbi, I'm a volunteer with the Los Angeles Fire Department, so I proudly wear this shirt.
Could we see it more fully? Can you throw out your chest, Ben? Oh, look at the back. Wow. Okay. Very well done. And you're supposed to say thank you for your service. So
it's an honor to serve with the dedicated firefighters of Los Angeles City Fire Department. I was on special duty this week because our president was in town, and when the president is in town, he gets a whole fire department team assigned to him, and I was able to serve with them this week, so I was very proud to do that.
Did you see anything? Or you just were there?
I saw him land, and I saw him drive away, and I saw about 3,500 police officers and plus Secret Service and other military who were there to protect him.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, Ben, that's very exciting.
That's cool. Thank you.
That is major cool. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav vetzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So it's good to be with you. Let me, by the way, Ben, in case you're interested, look at my shirt.
What is that shirt, Rabbi? Is that the military?
See, that's a pretend thing. It means that when I was in Azerbaijan, I visited the U.S. Embassy. The Marine Guards were having a sale of shirts to support their outreach into the civilian community. So I figured, hell, that's a fine way to spend some money. And so I now am almost a Marine. Not really, but anyhow, we did support. Okay, let's just begin with a simple little go around, checking in. How is everybody doing? What's new in your lives? Mara, do you want to start with you? Are you writing anything now?
I'm busy with writer's block right now.
Yeah, okay. Merle, what are you doing?
I have a busy weekend of dance recitals and Gabby's professional tap dance show on Sunday. So I've been fixing and repairing costumes.
Where will that show be?
It will be here in North Scottsdale.
Excellent. Okay.
And if we can, last year or 2 years ago, COVID got in the way. The tape that you buy, the video that you buy, is so big that you can't share it anywhere. So, but it's pretty amazing. So,
I can only imagine. Doug, what's going on in your life that you want to share with us? What's going on?
Not a whole lot. Last weekend,
boring group.
We went to Mono Lake last weekend and had a nice trip up there. My wife likes to look at the birds, and so she went on a little outing. But other than that, I have a friend who's expecting a baby next week, but that's about it.
No, that's pretty significant. That's pretty significant. And Ben, besides protecting our president against enemies, both foreign and domestic, especially domestic, what have you been involved in? What's happening?
Well, my wife and I just moved back into our house, which we finished remodeling, but I've missed a few weeks of Torah study. I'm so excited to be back today and have some good takeaways. So thank you, Rabbi, for spending the time with us.
Okay. Now, the appropriate greeting or the salutation for someone who has acquired a new house or moving back in is Tit Chadesh. Titchadesh, it's like renew it in joy, renew your life from chadash, renew your life in joy. So titchachu, plural. Okay, and let's see, Ellen, are you there? Not so much, Ellen? Okay. Lynn Brody Sloan, Rabbi Sloan, what's happening?
I am in fact here. And I have two of my students leaving for Israel to have their B'nai Mitzvah there. So I'm very excited about that.
When you say two of your students, forgive me, from where?
They are private students. As with the majority of Jews, they are unaffiliated, sadly. So that is a role I have filled ever since I became ordained.
Wow. Wow. Kol hakavod.
Thank you.
They should have brought you with them, of course, but just tell them I suggested it.
I shall do that.
Okay. Hi, Harv. We're checking in, Harv. Do you have anything new and wonderful you want to share with us? Nah. Boy, this is a down week. Okay. We can handle that. The Sedra today is Naso, and it's anyone remember what the word smorgasbord sounds like, what it is, a smorgasbord? It has a lot of different foods on display. They are not necessarily gastronomically related, but there are lots of interesting foods. And the Sedra Naso is kind of like that. It has a group of interesting, and as a rabbi, I can tell you, great for preaching. It's a good chapter, good Sedra for preaching. And you know that's the most important thing about a Torah portion. Is it good for preaching? Is it not? The first thing that it talks about connects with what we did last week. You remember last week at the beginning of the book of Numbers, the beginning of the book of Numbers begins with a census, and there's a complete census. And today in our Sedra, the census process is concluded, and they list a lot of the tribes and how many people and the jobs, and then they have a special focus on the census for the priestly group. Steve, we asked everyone while you were out talking to the president or something, if anything new or what's happening in your life that you want to check in with. Anything up?
I mean, other than watching the disturbing committee hearing last night?
I guess that counts.
Actually, we are having our house cleaned today and a circuit breaker blew. That's why I was out.
You know, maybe we all should just go to Starbucks and hang out for the hour. Maybe, you know, that
I'm all in favor of going back to in person.
Okay.
There's better interaction.
Okay. Yeah, I just a comment about last night. A friend, a very smart friend, asked me yesterday, well, what do you think the impact of the hearings will be? And I, being shy, modest, and certainly not a prophet, I said absolutely nothing. That'll have no impact at all, and that there's a Hebrew expression, hamevin yavin. Those who already know what's going on, and they may even tune in to watch it. But the rest of the folks,
Rabbi,
I was then called a pessimist and one who lacks all hope. And am I really Jewish?
Rabbi, I just want to add that I asked a couple of my Republican friends who, well, at least used to be friends, that I can still at least once in a while ask a political question. And these are people who went, you know, to Ivy League schools, doctors, lawyers. They all said It's manufactured political theater. They believe none of it. So I agree with you. Absolutely nothing is going to happen. Nobody's views are changing despite what Liz Cheney said last night.
Yeah, Cheney spoke beautifully. The comment that she made about we have the title honorable. No one in this group who supported what went on has a right to the title honorable. And I like that. Merle?
I was texting with a bunch of friends while we were watching it last night, and I think we all kind of said that Liz Cheney was amazing, whether you believe in her philosophy or her practices or not. She handled it really well and said the right thing. What my fear is that if something does happen, and I don't know whether anything will happen or not, my guess is nothing will happen. But my fear is that if something does happen, there will be more riots. Just because people have to get out there and cause a fight.
I don't want the conversation today to be about this. We're doing Torah. I just say that the other policeman who was, this policeman who was on and being interviewed by CNN, who was injured, and he's been on a lot of shows. I forget his name, but he's really out there. Said something which I just did not know, that he resigned from the police force, that he resigned because of all of the negativity directed toward him by his colleagues, by the police. And okay, so our Sedra is the finishing up of the Sedra last week, the finishing up of the census. And let's just clarify what's going on here. Why is Moses conducting the census? What's the point? And we actually have two good reasons here. What are the reasons? Anyone else? Reason for the census. Why was Moses doing the census? The first reason is that Moses wanted to prepare the people militarily. He had structured the Israelites into a fighting force. He needed a complete census of those men only, who would be available to fight from the age 20 to 50, who would be able to fight, and who would be allocated defensive positions within the context of the Israelite journey through the desert. That's number one. Number two is, Steve Miller?
I was going to say, could there be some foreshadowing? Because ultimately, he's weary and he needs to learn how to delegate and set up a structure for dealing with society. And you kind of need a census to organize that.
You know, it's funny. First of all, he was a child. Moses was a child at this time. If this census took place according to the dates in the Torah, 2 years after the Exodus, 38 years to go, Moses then was 82 years old. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please do not refer to that as old.
No.
Moses was a spring chicken. The premise of your question is a little bit offensive.
I didn't know, not that he was old, it's just that it doesn't happen yet. I said he was weary, not because of age, because of the burden.
Okay. Actually, that could very well be a foreshadowing. One of the reasons, Steve, why foreshadowing is easy in the Torah, because this stuff was all written long after the events. And therefore, you're not really foreshadowing if the people who wrote the text already knew long ago what happened. And it's there.
It's like writing the prequel.
Yeah, right. Well, I happen to like Let's Call Saul. And that was a fabulous prequel, and that worked out well. Now, in addition, Moses wanted to allocate the positions to the priests, the various priestly families. And that's really the second part, a second rationale, and that's what this Cedra really adds to what was last week. It adds that the various priestly families were counted and given specific tasks. So that's it. My last comment, because we're not going to focus on the census today, is to please note how a census, taking a census, is a political act. When you take a census, you organize the people, you count those who are deserving of being counted, and you do not count those whom you have excluded for certain reasons. And then you use the census material in ways which suit your own purposes. So just to note that, as in the United States, counting the people is not a benign act. You count the people and you are making political statements. If a census were conducted in 1787, there'd be a whole group of African Americans who wouldn't show up in the count, period, because they weren't full people.
That's not true.
Tell me.
Number one, they were full people. That is not true, and it's a misconception. It was a political compromise. The people were counted, and then a fraction was applied to that to determine how their addition to the population for purposes of allocating seats in the House of Representatives. It didn't mean they were a fraction of a person, and it certainly meant they had to be counted in full.
Mara?
In fact, African Americans were not counted in the census, and only later did census records, which were separate from the main census, were they created to count African American slaves. And that was only in the 1840s, 1850s. So that's simply not the case.
We'll let that sit. The fact is, the only point I was trying to make in closing off on the census, it's political. There are just all kinds of political things that go on during the census. Now, I want to move into a much more interesting topic, adultery. I find that very interesting. Adultery is a lovely, lovely topic. And we're speaking about someone who is going to bear the name Sotah, Sotah. Again, this is not going to be the focus of today's discussion. But a woman is accused by her husband of committing adultery. She denies it. He can't bring witnesses. They go to the Kohen. I checked it out, not a Levite. They go to the upper level. They go to a Kohen. And the Kohen creates an ordeal, a technical term, ordeal. When someone wanted to define for me what an ordeal is, it's certainly used all over the world. What's an ordeal?
And it creates an issue that could be a discipline or not, some kind of something that you produce that makes the person or people involved very uncomfortable.
Well, I could say an ordeal is a rabbi who speaks 40 minutes. I mean, you know, there are different meanings for ordeal. Mara, ordeal.
Okay, go. Ordeal.
Something that you're forced to endure against your will.
About trial by fire.
Trial by fire is a good thing. So there, Mara, I mean, Headline in the bulletin, David says trial by fire.
It's a good thing.
Good thing. Okay, so let me retract that slowly. But you go through a painful event, the outcome of which will determine whatever it is that needs to be determined. Your guilt, your innocence, a whole variety of other things. Trial by fire. The ordeal here is the woman is brought before the priest. The priest is dealing with an accusation of adultery. The priest makes a vile concoction, mixes it with liquid and dirt of the earth, a vile concoction. He writes out on a parchment curses toward the adulteress, and having done that, he dips the parchment in the vile concoction until the letters come off, and then he makes the accused adulteress drink it. And I'm not sure what the real punishment is. It says in the Torah, if you're guilty, your thighs will fall off and all that. I'm not quite sure what exactly the image isn't pretty, but there's going to be some bodily reaction which will demonstrate her guilt, or lack of bodily reaction demonstrate her innocence. Now, for those of you who saw my posting last night, I'm sorry, Harv, okay. Nevertheless, I raised a particular problem. This is not our topic for today, but I raised a problem. If you create a trial by fire, if you create an ordeal, you tell the woman, you drink this, if you're guilty, you're going to have all kinds of somatic reactions. And if you're not, go forth in peace. Theologically, I have a real problem here. Because what's going on is that the priest is setting up a situation in which God must intervene and create an answer.
Where are they leaving? I see
The only way that that woman will be found guilty or innocent will depend upon whether this mumbo jumbo created by the priest works. And the only way it could work is what we would today call a miracle, divine intervention. God has to be involved in this and to say, lady, you've done it, watch out for your thighs, and they fall off, or whatever that means. So here we have one of those rare circumstances in which Jews are manipulating ritual to get a response from God. And that's pretty interesting. That doesn't happen much, but it's there. Okay, and when I say mumbo jumbo, nothing personal intended. This is something which exists in peoples all across the world. Trial by ordeal, trial by fire is almost a universal phenomenon. And certainly the Indians have an expression of faith and meditative strength. They can walk barefoot over hot coals. That's good. Ben Goldfarb.
This may be way off point, but Rabbi, I'm thinking of trial by fire for the Salem witch trials, whereas as my history, I recall, if they were not witches, they would not burn, but if they were witches, they would burn. And obviously, they're all going to burn. Doesn't seem a very fair way to have a real trial and find facts.
Yeah, I mean, the Salem witch trials are one of the most horrible, among many horrible aspects of early American history. And yeah, they had it set up so that you lose and you don't come out of that clean. Yes.
But to make this concoction and have the drink it with the letters and then have a bodily part fall off or something, I guess you're calling for a miracle from God to perform a miracle on the spot.
Yep.
Again, seems pretty, I mean, with all due respect to God's role in our lives, seems unlikely that God would, as you just said, would make a miracle at that moment.
Yeah, I did put a kind of a snarky comment into my posting last night, Ben, when I said that I hope God's day book had a big opening that day, so God had time to handle this particular circumstance in Canaan, whatever they were, and to do it. I would like to believe that God perhaps has more significant concerns, but who am I to judge God's date book? Yeah, okay. So we're gonna go on again, looking at this smorgasbord. And Brad Ellison, good to see you. I'm glad that you're here. The Priestly Benediction is here. Okay, this is the home place where Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and keep you, God cause the face of Hashem be gracious unto you, lift up and grant you peace. That blessing is found here in this Sedra. And that is worth a lot of time. And maybe we'll do that next year. I would go to, when I was living in Israel for 12 years, would go to a modern Orthodox service Saturday morning. And they did a priestly blessing every single Shabbos morning. And they would call all the Kohanim male. They did not approve of Bat Kohen, daughter of a priest. They called all the Kohanim up front. They brought often their youngest children with them, covered their heads with talit, and covered the heads of their children as well, lest the children be exposed to the rays of the blessing, which could be too harsh for them to withstand. And so you would see all around in the congregation that other fathers were covering other children as well with the talit. But the Kohanim who were up front would lift up their hands like this. And we all know, Dr. Spock, but this is where he got it from. They would lift up their hands like this and recite the priestly benediction. And it was a moment of high significance in every single service. Before the Kohanim could do that blessing, they had to go out with the Levites in the congregation. Dr. Spock, Mr. Spock, Mr. Spock. They had to go out with the Levites, and the Levites washed the Kohanim's hands, the hands that are getting ready to bless. So the Levites would leave, and this was now, going on right now. Tomorrow it'll occur again. And the Levites go, they take the Kohanim into the washing area, they wash the hands of the Kohanim dry, and go off and bless. This has a name, a nice old Yiddish, Jewish, Hebrew name. Anyone know? It's called duchening, D-U-C-H-A-N-I-N-G. It's called duchening. The duchen was the platform on which the priests in the temple stood in order to bless the people. At the end of Sukkot in Jerusalem, there is a massive experience of priestly blessing. And I say tens of thousands of people. They come to the Kotel, they're spread out way beyond that, and the Kohanim backs to the Kotel do this blessing. And for many Jews, this is the spiritual highlight of the year. It is extremely significant. So here it is in the book of Numbers, duchening, washing of the hands, standing before the ark. There's something in here that I do want to reference. If we look at Numbers chapter 6 and verse 22 and following, we will see something which is so much a significant part of what it means to be Jewish. Okay. Now it starts, I'm on page 930 in the Plout, if you happen to have one. The Eternal spoke to Moses, speak to Aaron and his sons, thus shall you, to Aaron the kids are told, this is how you bless the people of Israel, Yevarechecha, and so forth. Then, look at verse 27. I will read it. This is the end of it. Thus shall they link my name with the people of Israel, and I, God said, will bless them. Why do I believe that is an enormously potent and important statement? Why? Why? Again, thus they shall link my name with the people of Israel, and I will bless them. Any thoughts, anybody? Steve?
It establishes a direct relationship. There's no intermediary between us and God.
Big and yes. Big and yes. But there's more, and maybe equally important, if not more important.
That you're protected by God?
I want to read again. Thus they shall link my name with the people of Israel, and I will bless them. Who blesses the people?
God.
God, not the Kohanim. And goes back to Steve's comment about, who's really in charge and no intermediary. Even at this point where the high priest is standing before the whole people on the duchen, in the temple, doing the ritual, quoting the Torah, please, folks, don't forget, they are a channel for my blessings. They are not more and not less than a channel. We don't have anyone in our people who possesses the right to originate and convey a blessing. They are channels for the divine will. And it's a simple, it's like half of a sentence. V'samu Shmei b'nei Israel, put my name over the people of Israel. 2 words, va'ani avarchem. I will bless them. Not the high priest, not the hierarchy, not any human being. If there are any blessings to be bestowed, I, God, am doing the bestowing. Merle, you had your hand up?
No, it was just to say that the Kohanim are the conduits from God. But you said it.
Channel, conduit, yes. Hi, Brad. Good to see you. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Rabbi. It's the first part of that sentence that intrigues me. It's they shall link my name with the people of Israel. They being the people of Israel, I guess.
Priest. The priest.
They is the priest.
Right. So what it is,
they shall link my name with the people of Israel. So how is it? Isn't God the one who's linking his name with the people of Israel?
Let me,
Why is it, why are the priests linking God with the people of Israel?
so that's super. So what we're doing is really putting down the priests in every way possible. Even
Well,
though they have fancy robes and on Yom Kippur they look, glorious. Nevertheless, but Brad, I'm going to have to run and take cover in the Hebrew. I love to do that. The English says, thus they shall link my name with the people of Israel. The Hebrew says, and they shall put my name over the people of Israel. What I'm pointing out is the translation is a commentary. It's not a direct translation. The word link would not have occurred to anyone translating the Hebrew if they just read the Hebrew sentence. It's not
but
there.
it's clear to you that the they is the priest, because
Yes.
the last they is in verse 23. Thus you shall bless the people of Israel, say to them. That's
got
the
it.
last they
Yes.
is the people of Israel, not the priests.
I will absolutely grant you the literary privilege of having the pronoun refer to the nearest noun, and that should work, but it is clearly not understood to be the intention here. Okay, when I read it, just read the Hebrew across. Daber el Aaron, speak to Aaron Banav, and they should bless. Ko tavarechu, they shall bless the children of Israel and say to them. And so the parallelism is fairly clear to that opening. Speak to the priests, and they shall bless them. And look at the last sentence. They shall link my name and bless over them. So it's the they, them, the priests, the people. I think that's what's there. I think that's fairly clear. Okay, interesting thing here, because this is not what we're going to focus on, even though we only have 18 minutes left. This is not what we're going to focus on, because I want to point out something that really annoys me. A Kohen doing this blessing must be physically perfect. Now, I don't mean perfect like a superhero perfect, okay? But without disability, impairment. If the Kohen has a stutter, the Kohen may not do this work. If the Kohen is visually impaired, may not do it. If the Kohen married a divorcee, which is totally forbidden, may not do it. One of the problems I have within the halakha, within Jewish law itself, is that it overtly disadvantages the handicapped and the impaired. They may not be of the highest rank of the people. If a priest becomes injured, he's put on pension. I mean that literally. Literally, put on pension. He's out, he goes, whatever tends his priestly flock, but he may not bless the people. He may not function as a Kohen in the Beit Mikdash. That limitation against the handicapped is a problem for me. And it's something which I just point out so that I can say, aha, I reject that. Before we jump into the subject matter for today, anyone have a question about anywhere we've been? Anyone have a question or a comment about where we've been? Nope. Okay. Now, first question. So what's the difference between a Nazarite and a Nazarene? What is the difference between Nazirite, a Nazarite, and a Nazarene, Nazarene? What's the difference, Brad?
Well, I'm not sure about a Nazarene. Maybe that's just somebody from Nazareth, but a Nazarite, isn't a Nazarite somebody who takes a vow of asceticism for a certain period of time and doesn't cut his hair and doesn't drink and
Is a total bore. Yes.
but it's for a limited period of time.
Yes. Now, you're right about the Nazir, the Hebrew, Nazarite, Nazir, one who takes an oath of separation. That's what we're going to be focusing on for the rest of our little time today. The Nazarite. But not to get it confused, you were also correct, but you didn't quite grab it hard enough. The Nazarene is Jesus of Nazareth. So there are Nazarene fundamentalist churches, which are very, 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 very conservative, and they carry the name Nazarene, namely Jesus. Okay? But I want us to be able to separate between Nazarite, a Nazir, and the Nazarene. Now, we're going to actually confront a question. What do you think Judaism has to say about asceticism? What do you know? Asceticism. What do you think the Jewish attitude is? You know, when some of us know Tamar Ashkenazi, she needed to take a break, this beautifully brilliant woman. So last week, she spent 4 or 5 days in a Catholic retreat house. And she was one of the sisters for those days. And she dressed simply, ate simply, and took on a degree of the ascetic life of those nuns. She needed the retreat and found it good. What is the Jewish attitude toward asceticism, Brad and Steve?
Well, I'm guessing that it's accepting of asceticism for a limited period of time, but that the priority is placed on the active life and not on the contemplative life in Judaism. That we obtain our virtue through the practice of virtue.
Okay.
And that means the 613 mitzvot.
It do. Okay, and Steve, and I'll get back. Steve.
Actually, I was going to say pretty much what Brad said, that, you know, while we might all need a break, overall, if you can't repair the world sitting in a cave.
One of the interesting things about the oh, Merle. Yes, Merle.
I think sometimes I agree with what Brad and Steve said, but I think sometimes we need to take the time, as Tamara did, to reprioritize what is important to us, our family, and how we do things and what we believe in.
You know that there is many congregations, including our own, have meditative experiences or settings in which people do, and whether it's going to be through yoga or yoga meditation or whatever forms they are. This legislation in this Sedra setting up the rules for the Nazarite at the end of the day, or the 30 days, or the 6 months, or whatever the period is of the Nazarite status, the Nazir, the person who did it, has to bring a sin offering. Is that not interesting? That even though what that person did, let us say for the finest reasons, withdrawing and not eating, drinking, whatever, the hair, nothing but good intentions. But when you're done denying yourself these normal pleasures, you have to bring a sin offering. The rabbis ask why. And they come up with Steve's comment and Brad's comment and Merle's comment. The world was given to us to enjoy. To fail to enjoy that which God provided for us, I'm speaking old talk here, right? That is a sin. You're supposed to be able to go out and enjoy life. By the way, very Jewish, eating, okay, is part of that. And drinking, I understand that people have all kinds of different approaches, but it says in the tradition, alcohol rejoices the heart. Getting a drink in proper limitation is a good thing, not to be frowned upon. Not for kids, not for sick, not for this, for that, but it's part of enjoying life. And if we choose to cut that off from ourselves, we are committing a sin. The same thing with the hair cutting. Grooming is pleasurable. It is for my cat. It is for people. Grooming is pleasurable. And you want to fix your hair, comb your hair. I'm trying to grow a man bun, and my stop laughing. The person who cuts my hair kindly said to me, in another lifetime, Rabbi. Okay, so that's not going to happen. But it's fun. Name the two most well-known Nazarites in the Bible. Okay, got 5 seconds left. Any thoughts? Okay, I'm going to give you.
I was going to say the sons of Joseph.
I'm sorry?
Ephraim and Manasseh.
Nazarites?
No.
King David?
No, King David was so far from a Nazarite. He went around adulterizing. He was not one of them. Mara.
I think Samson.
Samson,
Yes.
That's who it was. Yeah,
That's who it was.
cutting the hair. Yeah.
Okay, but if you really wanted to get a hint, and it's a little late to tell you, and I did this intentionally, but if you look at the Haftarah for this week, lo and behold, the Haftarah comes from, I can turn the page here and find it, from the book of Judges, when it talks about the birth of Samson. Okay, so Samson is connected to our Sedra because he is a famous.
My big concern's the kitchen floor.
I'm sorry? Okay, so Samson was a Nazarite. Interesting. How did he get to be a Nazarite? His mother did it to him. She was not able to have children, and she said, oh, if I have a kid, I will make certain that he takes on the Nazarite role for his entire life, not a 30-day gig. the life. And so Samson, born then, is a Nazarite by dint of his mother's commitment. And Samson, you know the story at the end of the day. You remember Delilah? Remember Delilah? Yeah? Yeah. You know, cherchez la femme. It is a standard biblical approach. Delilah found out from Samson that the source of his supernatural strength is his uncut hair. She cut the hair. He was captured. He was blinded. But eventually, in his death throes, he brought down a temple of the Philistines and killed many. Fine. That's Samson. A Nazarite. There's one other Nazarite. And less well known that he was a Nazarite, but he is well known. His name is Samuel. Samuel, the prophet, who eventually would anoint King David, king of the Israelite people, first anointed King Saul, and then King David. Okay? So Samuel was a Nazarite. How did he get to be a Nazarite? Lo and behold, his mother had trouble giving birth, and she promised God. Does this sound familiar? Promised God that if she has a kid, he'll be a Nazarite. Samuel was born, he was a Nazarite. Samson had a superpower. He was a typical Jewish man, huge, powerful, physically incredible. What was Samuel's superpower? He became a prophet. He was able to receive communication from God. So these are the two most famous Nazarites in Jewish tradition, both becoming Nazarites after being born to previously barren women. The Nazarite rule goodbye, Gilroy, thank you. Goodbye. The Nazarite in the Bible, in the Torah, here in our Sedra, usually for 30 days, but it could be for longer periods. It's not no alcohol. It is nothing produced of the grape. So thank God, whiskey, not a problem. But nothing produced of the grape, including not eating a grape, not eating grape skin or having grape, you roll things up and the grape, nothing. So grape drinks totally out, no cutting of the hair, and no approaching of graves or coming near the dead. Steve.
I'm a little perplexed. Why would God actually answer the prayer where what is being offered is something that God doesn't approve of?
It's a wonderful question. But it's not that God doesn't approve of or celebrate. It is a path people could choose. And having walked it, they have to pull back and make amends.
But
I like the question. Theologically, fascinating. God would expect a guilt offering, a sin offering. Why expect a sin offering if it's something which in these stories of Samson and Samuel, clearly becoming a Nazarite was a good thing? It was what the mothers offered to God in exchange for having a kid? I'm not going to be able to go beyond that, Steve. An interesting theological question. We could push it. I could invent something, but I'm more comfortable saying it's a good question. It seems that in the story of Samson and Samuel, God is okay with the exchange. You give me a Nazarite, I'll give you a son. Or I'll give you a son, you give me a Nazarite. Seems like that's a good deal. And here we're saying, yet you have to bring a sin offering. I'm going to have to say, let it sit. I don't have a better answer. It's a good question. There are a few like that. So what do you say when you're studying in the Talmud and you come across a question which is not going to yield an answer? What's the Hebrew phrase, word? Teku. Teku. We should know it. Teku is such a frequent, important word in the Talmudic study. Teku, which is really an abbreviation of tekum, which means the matter stands. Teku. We are at an impasse. We don't have an answer. It stands. And I'm going to have to say to you on this, I'm going to give it a teku. Okay? But the good news is that the teku will all be resolved when Elijah comes. So just keep like a list on your refrigerator, and when Elijah shows up, give him that list.
Thank you,
There's
Rabbi.
such a radical difference between Christianity and Judaism regarding the nature of asceticism. Such a radical difference that Judaism does not believe that people who don't marry, that people who live a life of separation, who deny themselves food, clothing, who go to live in caves, right? Recently, I saw caves of the monks in Turkey, an incredibly, and I know the name of the place, I'm not going to think of it right now, but there's a place filled with caves occupied by Christians who came to be ascetic monks. You don't have that in Judaism. I'm not going to give you any reasons for or after. You have to think about it yourselves. For Judaism, crawling into a cave and meditating privately for 40 years is not something we celebrate. Thank you for today. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for firefighting. Thank you for being here and celebrating Torah. And Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Very welcome, Earl. Shabbat Shalom. Brad, happy Denver. Shabbat Shalom.